Hi, I'm Catherine Gray, founder of She Angel Investors and co founder of the She Angels Foundation. I'm also the podcast host of Invest in Her and an award winning producer, author, and TEDx speaker. Our show, Invest in Her, features phenomenal female founders and funders. As you know, women receive less than 2% of venture capital funding. Our series is about accelerating the funding of women by connecting them to funding resources. Let's meet today's guest. Thanks for tuning in to Invest in Her this week. I'm your host, Catherine Gray, and today we have on an extraordinary guest. She has helped startups to create storylines and brands that have collectively raised billions of dollars in the venture capital world. I'd like to welcome to the show the CEO of Blue Meta Design, Amy Hanlon. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, Catherine. I am great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, we have so many startups, founders that listen in, and boy, they're going to be interested to know, how you've collectively, helped these startups raise money from venture capital. It's always a mystery to people, how do they raise money from these venture capital companies, especially women? We get less than 2%. So it's kind of that unknown world. And I always like to, pull the curtain back and talk about that. A little bit about you first and how you got into this arena, because it is unusual to have women in this space. So you had just shared with me that you were born in Indiana, but now you reside in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And what's it like there? And how did you, start this Blue Meta Design business and get into helping, these startups to coif their stories and their brands so that they could present to venture capital companies? Like, you shared an interesting story with me, and I'd love to share it with the audience.
Sure. I actually fell into this industry. I'm actually a graphic designer by trade. So I've worked in a variety of different industries throughout my career. And I had the opportunity to freelance full-time for a startup through a referral. And that's kind of what kicked it all off. That was about five and a half years ago. And then through working with this startup, I just kept getting more and more referrals and started getting some pretty big names. And it got to the point where I was working with one particular VC, very big VC. They were needing more of my time that I just didn't have. So I set off to start an agency and just been slowly building through the time. We've worked with multiple VCs now. We have great working relationships with several of them still. Countless startups, anywhere from the seed typically to a C. Series C is typically kind of our sweet spot. And just been working with them a variety of ways. We are a branding agency, so we do branding, but then anything else the brand touches. So it could be a website, it could be collaterals, promotional, and then the ever important pitch deck, which we've kind of started to niche down a little bit in and keep getting more and more and more referrals specifically for pitch decks, and been kind of working with a lot of those companies even past the pitch deck and getting their funding.
Yeah, I mean, the pitch deck is obviously key to getting the funding, right? That and the actual pitch itself, how the founder delivers that. But the pitch deck really opens the door, right? So you have really developed a way that you help them to tell their story in a way that is convincing enough, obviously, to get funding, right? So what's the process there? Like, let's say I'm a startup founder. I don't really know where to begin. I don't know how to raise money. I would come to Blue Meta Design and you would help me do what?
Sure. We work, again, a variety of different levels of funding, depending on the amount and the series that you're at. Investors are looking for different amounts of information. So that is key, is knowing where a startup is starting out at and knowing the information that they're wanting to, the questions they're going to ask the information they want to know about your company, about the market, the projections you have, the traction you have, that sort of thing. To start out, typically what we do is we work with the founders. In our discovery call, I always have the founders pitch to us. Give me your pitch. I want to hear how you talk. I want to hear the information you're presenting. Typically, most founders already have a baseline deck. It could be a matter of a slide with just information, no graphics, no nothing, but they have at least a starting point for us. So as they're going through the pitch, I'm hearing the story, understanding the company, understanding the problems and the solutions that they're providing. And that really helps us put that information and that story into a story arc or a story flow.
Let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
So most founders will tell me, especially the ones that are already super successful now, they'll tell me, oh my God, I look back and look at my first deck and it's embarrassing. Like, is that true? So when you first get the first deck and the first peek, I imagine you're like, OMG, right?
Yes. Yeah. That is totally normal.
Yeah.
Vast majority of founders are founders. You're not designers.
And nothing for anybody to put embarrassed about, right?
No. Very, very normal. I would say the vast majority of the decks, like I would say even 90%, are nowhere ready to be presented to an investor. So that's where we come in. We really help make sure that storyline flows in a way that an investor is used to, and making sure the information makes sense to the investor. A lot of times founders like to throw the kitchen sink into a pitch deck, and that is not what investors need. They need to understand what the problem, the solution is, the market, how your revenue models, the business model, those sort of things, not your grandest wish list that you're going to conquer the world one day. You need to simplify your messaging and making sure, again, you've got that story arc. A lot of times people focus too much on the solution and not enough on the problem. And if you don't showcase what the problem is and that your company is there to solve a pain point for people and companies, then it's not going to click what the solution is. After we do all of the story arc and making sure the flow makes sense, then we bring in the visuals and making sure the visuals are emphasizing the points that we want to be made on the slide and minimizing as much copy as humanly possible.
Got it. So it's almost a visual story. And when you interview the entrepreneur, is it about, like you tell about telling the story? Is it like making the story engaging enough that someone wants to hear about the product in the first place?
It's very,
Can you give us an example? Like, do you have a client that you worked with that has an amazing story that you could share with us and has been successful in raising money?
Unfortunately, we're under NDAs with all of our clients, so I can't give very specific details.
Okay, so just a generalization.
Yeah. Typically, so whenever we're working with a story flow, what you want to think through is think back to like really any movie, any book, they all have a story flow. So it's not giving you the best of the story right at the beginning. It's an arc, it's a buildup. So you got to lay that baseline, present the information, and then it's like, bam, here's the solution. Here's what we're changing. You've got to give a little bit of that anticipation in those pitches in your decks. You want to make that connection with the investor to make sure that they realize this makes sense. It's clicking. You've got that story up. It's that gradual up and the gradual down. So depending on the company, depending on the vertical, it's going to vary on where that arc is, whether it's right at the beginning, whether it's a little bit more towards the end. So they're all just slightly different, but you do need to make sure you kind of have that arc of the story.
I love that you help people with that solution. I think that's a big obstacle. Like you said, somebody might have a great product idea or service, but they're not necessarily a storyteller or a brand maker. You've also helped people, create digital campaigns that have, gotten as many as, 1 million views. So what part of that do you do for their founders? Like what services do you offer to help boost that online presence, which, today, a lot of people won't invest in you unless you have a big online presence and a lot of followers, right?
Yeah. It's really, in the instances where we're working with editorial campaigns, it's a very holistic approach that goes into this. The content is super, super important. That's something we don't actually do. But what we do is we team up with VCs and startups that have the content, but they just need that little extra oomph to create that connection with the reader. So it can be infographics, it can be videos to accompany the campaigns. It can be social media graphics. So whenever you share, it's really making sure that the visuals are emphasizing what the content is, and really making sure that they are interesting and truly telling the story of what the content is saying. Visuals are just another form of communication. It's a visual communication or it's a written communication, but they need to work together.
And so you do this not just for the founders, but you do this also for the venture capital firms.
We do.
Interesting.
A lot. We do a lot.
Oh, I love that. You know what? I think I have some clients for you. I think, so the venture capital firms want to garner organic traffic as well, is what you're
Absolutely.
saying.
Yeah. One of the VCs that we work with is very well known. I will leave it at that, and are very much a thought leader. So we work hand in hand with the editorial portion of that VC, and it's very much the same as a startup founder. These infographics that we're getting are very basic PowerPoint charts. And what we do is we take that information and just elevate it visually. So it's more of a storytelling element. It's branded to the VC. There's a clear connection. And then it's an easy graphic to share on social media as well, which gets even more traction to the actual post that they're working on or the campaign.
I love that. And then I would think another big plus of working with Blue Meta Design as a startup founder is not just in creating the pitch deck, but you all work with all these different VCs. And let's face it, that's, you have to know someone to get into that space, right? To know someone that knows someone. The fact that you work with them, I think, is a leg up in the fact that you connect them. I mean, that's what's help you to be instrumental in helping these startups raise billions of dollars in that venture capital world that's very difficult to tap into, right? So what a unique position you're in.
It is a unique position. Like I said, we work with a lot of VCs with editorial campaigns, but we actually do a lot of VC pitch decks too, that have raised, just a single deck has raised $3 or $4 billion. So we work hand in hand with the GPs and the partners. We know what they're looking for from the investors, and that really gives us a leg up that I think a lot of other agencies don't get. We know through the conversations that we have with them what they're looking for, what that story arc needs to include, what the different series of pitch deck, the information that they're looking for, we make sure it's in there because we have those conversations with them and we have that great working relationship with them as well. So we just kind of pass that on to the startups that we work with as well.
Wow, that's a definite leg up. And, a lot of people too, when they're founders, they're very focused on their product and service, and they don't know much about the venture capital world. In fact, even knowing, are they a candidate for venture capital? If so, what kind? What venture capital aligns what has a mission statement that aligns with the type of product or service that they're doing. A lot of times people will waste time calling on venture capital firms that don't align with their product or service. So, it wastes everybody's time. So I would think that would cut a lot of that out too by working with Blue Meta Design. So it's a really cool space that you're in, and a really unique position. And I do think founders should check you out and see, how you could help them get a leg up on their pitch deck, their website, their social media, and then connecting to funding if venture capital is the right way for them to go. Of course, VC funding isn't for everyone. What would you say would be the ideal type of company to go after venture capital funding?
I think you made a really great point, Catherine, that I kind of want to back up on real quick, is making sure that the venture capitalist firm is a right fit for you. Not only are you gathering financial backing from the VC, but a lot of times there's a lot of other additives that you're getting with a venture capitalist partner. It really is a partnership because they're investing in you, but also keep in mind, it's a business transaction. They're looking for investment back from you as you grow and do well. So the thing you want to make sure is making sure that it's the right partner. There's a lot of VCs that specialize in verticals. There's VCs that specialize in business models and revenue models that they know, and they can be a better asset in helping you growing. So that's something you absolutely should take your time and research, and making sure that you're going after the right fit. If it's not the right fit, it's not going to be beneficial for you.
Right. And what would be the ideal company to go after venture capital? One that needs seed funding, or one that wants to raise a series A or B or C, which is millions of dollars, because they want to scale, right?
Right. There is really, there's a wide variety. There's a lot of VCs that are popping up now that run the gamut. There are some that just focus on the seed. There's some that focus on just early stage. So it could be a seed A, B. There's some that only focus on growth, which is your CD and up. So it really depends on where the company is and kind of what you're looking for that funding for. Sometimes it is for product development. Sometimes it's for growth. It really runs the gamut of what you're looking to do. But in this world, speed is the name of the game. So that's a lot of times why you get those funding, is so you can move faster.
And when someone's looking for seed money, does that mean that they haven't even started the business, or that they've started the business and they need seed money to grow the business? What exactly is the seed money looking for?
I've seen both. I've seen typically a seed is a lesser amount of money. Typically $1 million and below is typically where that seed is. I've seen companies that are established, but just aren't having the traction, but have good, they have the growth traction, but not as fast as what it needs to be to develop to the next phase. So that's where they get the investment. I've seen companies we've worked with that have a product that's active and has been active for like 2 months, and then they're looking for the investment. So these are, I consider, I always call the seed companies the baby companies. Like, these are the foundation. Like, you're just getting started, not sure like what the next steps are moving at lightning speed at all times, and really need just kind of that helping hand. Okay, this is the next step. This is what we need. And we're there to kind of assist those companies.
Yeah. And of course, the plus of going into venture capital funding is that then you have people from those companies that actually, open doors for you and, help you grow it through. I mean, that's the value of it. Like, some people would say, why would I go in and want venture capital and give part of my company away? But it's because truly it can open doors and take you to levels that you probably otherwise wouldn't be able to do on your own, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the investors, not always, but sometimes they'll ask to be a seat on your board. And
Right.
having that level of person on your board, the optics of that, let alone actually having access to the brain and the inner workings of business as a whole, and like you said, the connections is, I mean, you can't get that anywhere else.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I just think you've fallen into a really cool niche. And, I always love for our show to provide resources that help people get the funding, get to the next level. And so I'm so happy to introduce Blue Meta Design to them. How do they reach you, Amy?
Yeah. If anyone's interested in learning more about us, take a look at our website, bluemetadesign.com. We're also on LinkedIn and we're on Instagram. Instagram is kind of our additional case study portfolio platform. We don't typically use it as what you would standardly think of, like we're not an influencer or anything on there, but we do have additional work on there if you want to take a look past what's on the website.
Love that. Love that. And of course, you all can find me, Catherine Gray, at Invest in Her on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and our She Angel Investors on all of the social media. Amy, thanks for sharing your knowledge and input today. That's so helpful to our listeners. Really great to meet you. And everybody, make it a great week. Remember to invest in her.